talk about the U.S. Constitution, human rights, and gender issues. So, first, who can tell me what is a constitution? It's a law. Mm-hmm. Good. It's a document and it has laws for the whole country. So, like you said, the Constitution establishes and creates the laws and the structure of the U.S. government. And our Constitution was created mainly by James Madison. He's considered the father of the Constitution because he wrote most of the Constitution in 1787. At first, there were two different constitutions, but they decided that his version was the best. And then the Constitution first became law in 1782. So our Constitution has three main parts. The first is the preamble. A preamble is an introduction. It's the first paragraph of the Constitution. It talks about the purpose and it summarizes the Constitution. The second part are the articles. This is the main part of the Constitution. There are 7 different articles, and we'll talk about those later. And then last are the 27 amendments. Amendments are changes and new laws that were added to the Constitution after it became law. So first, the preamble. The preamble is the introduction to the Constitution. It's only a paragraph long. And when I was in school, when I was a little kid, we had to learn the preamble, to memorize it, and then stand in the front of the classroom and say the preamble for our teacher and for our whole class. And we got a grade on how well we did. But it was kind of difficult to memorize because a lot of the language is really old. So we had this song that we listened to that would sing the words to the preamble. And I have it right here. It's a video from a really old educational company called Schoolhouse Rock. This was a company in the 1970s that made a lot of educational videos for U.S. school children. So I want to play this video. This is about when the first politicians wrote the Constitution. It was only 13 colonies, and all of our students know that. So the Constitution starts with 3 words: we the people. This is the preamble. 2000s, when I was in school, we watched these videos too. And I think kids in America nowadays still watch these videos. They're kind of silly, but I think they're really helpful, and they repeat a lot of the information, and it's easier to remember when it's a song. All right, so back to the presentation.
Does everyone have to know by heart this preamble?
I think so. I think it's
Every
really
citizen.
common. Not every citizen, but it's really common in schools. I think when I was 13 is when we had to learn it by heart. And I did, and I went to the front of the class and I said it perfectly, but my teacher didn't like me, so she said that I messed up. So I didn't get 100, but I know the preamble. I think most Americans do too. Alright, so the second part of the Constitution, the main part, are the 7 articles. So the first 3 establish or set up the structure of the U.S. government. There are 3 different branches, 3 different parts. The legislative branch, where they make the laws, the executive branch, where the president has power, and the judicial branch, where they have the courts and the judges and the Supreme Court. Next, Article 4 talks about the relationships between the states. So how states interact with each other, how they make laws about trade, and about movement between the states. And then the 5th is about amending or changing the Constitution. You can change the Constitution, but it's a very long process. You have to have I think 3/4 of the states approve any amendments. And next, Article 6 is about debts. It's about national supremacy, so the power of the national government compared to the power of the states, and about the oaths of office that politicians take when they start working. And last, Article 7 is about ratification, so how you can approve new laws and new amendments. So do you guys know anything about the Kyrgyz constitution? Do you know if it's similar or different to the American one? A little different? What is?
Had like preamble, instruction, and some articles. I didn't remember, but it's have more articles than U.S.
Yeah, I was surprised we only have 7 articles. Our constitution is pretty short. It's not that difficult to memorize the different parts.
But have more laws than US. Because it's looks like a Russian
Okay.
constitution.
And tell us please, when was it adopted, our constitution?
Our in 1991 or
1991?
yes.
You read it, you have? Yeah? Yes. Да. So, when is it? Do you remember the date? So when? 5th of May. May. Great.
Alright, good. So, last, I think the most important part of the Constitution, ironically, are the 27 amendments. So the parts that were added after the original Constitution became law. So an amendment is a law that is added to the Constitution after it was written. We have 27 of them, and for them to get passed, 3/4 of the states have to approve of the amendment. So how many states are there in the US? 50. And what is 3/4 of 50? What's 75% of 50? So 38 of the states have to agree to a new amendment for it to become law. So the most important and recognized amendments are the first 10 amendments. And these are known as the Bill of Rights. And when we're in school, we have to learn the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments. They are the basic human rights that Americans thought are most important. And the most recent amendment, the 27th Amendment, was added in 1992. So that's pretty recent. All right, so next we're going to talk about human rights in the Constitution. There are 3 different ways that human rights are addressed or talked about in the Constitution. So the first is in the Bill of Rights, those first 10 amendments. The second is how racial discrimination is talked about. And the third is about gender issues. So first, what is a human right? It's the basic rights and freedoms that belong to people everywhere in the world. But different countries have different ideas about what a basic human right is. And in the US, our human rights are guaranteed mainly by the Bill of Rights, those first 10 amendments. Does anybody know any amendments from the US Constitution? The first one is, I think, the most popular one. The First Amendment, it guarantees 5 basic rights: the right to religion, the right to assembly, so the right to gather with other people, the right to petition, which means to ask your government for changes for things that you want. Then the freedom of press, which means you can write something in newspaper and not go to jail. And last, freedom of speech, so you can express your opinions without worrying about going to jail. So next, the Second Amendment is really popular where I'm from. It's the right to have a gun. For some reason, this right is more important than all the other rights because it's the Second Amendment. But a lot of Americans think that guns are really important, so they made it the Second Amendment. It's also the right to have a militia, which is an army of citizens. And this was very relevant during the American Revolution when the citizens would come together and fight against the British. The Third Amendment is one that allows people to refuse soldiers to stay in their homes. So if a soldier knocks on your door and they want to live in your house, you can say, no, I don't want you here. And you don't have to let them stay there, and you don't have to feed them. Yeah, this is important, I think, during the American Revolution when the soldiers were going to different cities to fight the British, and they didn't have a place to stay. All right, next is the Fourth Amendment, and it protects citizens from unreasonable searches and seizures. So that means that a police officer can't come to your house and search through all your stuff. They can't take your bag and say, what do you have in there? Unless they have a reason to do that.
How do they prove the reason?
They have to get a warrant, which is a document, from a judge, and then say that there's a probable cause. So a good chance that you did some sort of crime, and that there's evidence in your bag or in your belongings. All right, next is the Fifth Amendment, and this one says that you cannot be tried for the same crime twice. So for example, if someone thinks that you murdered your neighbor, you go to trial, you go to a judge, and they say, no, you didn't do that. If they find more evidence later, they can't try you again because they already said that you're innocent. This also says that you don't have to self-incriminate. That means that when you are accused of a crime, if you did do it, then you don't have to say anything. You can say, I plead the fifth. I don't want to say anything, and then you don't have to.
So does it mean that you can kill another neighbor as well?
No, it's technically a different crime because it's a different neighbor.
Oh,
So.
okay.
Were you planning to do that? Do you have a certain neighbor in mind?
Yes.
All right, next is the Sixth Amendment. This one gives people the right to a quick trial by jury in criminal cases. A criminal case is one between a citizen and the government. So this means you get a jury, so I think 10 people who decide if you're guilty or not, and it will be quick. It won't take 10 years for the trial to happen. And you also get a right to a lawyer. So the police can't accuse you of anything if you don't have a lawyer. Next, the seventh is similar to the sixth. This ensures a trial by jury, but in civil lawsuits. So civil is a lawsuit between two different citizens. And this ensures that you have a jury of 10 people who will decide if you're guilty or innocent. And number 8, it prohibits cruel and unusual punishments. So if the police arrest you, they can't torture you in jail, they can't deprive you of food, they have to treat you like a human being. And the Ninth Amendment says that people have rights that are not included in the Constitution. So the Constitution doesn't list all of the rights that people have. There are still other ones that are not listed in the Constitution. It doesn't specify what those rights are. It just says that there are more rights that the Constitution does not talk about.
But then it should be some document attached to the Constitution with a list of the rights.
It should, but we don't have that.
Oh, good.
Why is that good?
Because you can claim for any right being a citizen.
You can, but then you have to go to the Supreme Court, and it's very long, and usually the Supreme Court uses the Constitution to say if you have a right or not, but then if the right's not in the Constitution, then...
So tricky.
Yeah. I think it doesn't really work that well. Alright, and last is the 10th Amendment, and this says that some powers that are not given to the national government instead belong to the people and to the individual states. So this law gives more power to the state governments than the national government. Good, so those are the first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights. Are there similar laws in your constitution in Kyrgyzstan?
What amendment?
Are any of them similar to these first 10 amendments? Maybe.
In fact, we don't know anything.
You what?
In fact, we don't know anything about those institutions.
You don't?
A little bit different.
A lot of difference?
Because we are near to Russia, and it's our constitution looks like Russian constitution.
Okay.
And we not allowed to wear a weapon, but in US we can. And it has some like another mentality. And this is plays a role, a big role on the constitution.
Which do you think is better? Allowing people to own weapons or not allowing them want to?
Not well. I don't think that's like basically like United States is like it's like the first like there's a lot of crimes going on in the United States, like people shot teenagers at schools and everything, and that's why when I studied in the school in the United States, you have like metal
Detectors?
yeah and everything, which was like you don't feel safe in the United States. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I agree. I think the United States is the country that has the most school shootings, and it has the most accidental deaths from guns, because a lot of people don't store their guns so that their kids might find them and then shoot themselves and then die. So I think that's a problem. All right, good. Next, racial discrimination. So there are 3 main amendments that talk about race in the Constitution. But the Constitution, the original version, doesn't talk about race at all, only in the amendments. The first is the 13th Amendment. This is the amendment that made slavery illegal. It was only passed after the Civil War, so the war between the northern states and the southern states. And it became law in 1865 when the North finally won the Civil War, and then the South had to agree to outlawing slavery. Before this amendment, some states had already outlawed slavery, mostly states in the North. But other states like Kentucky and Delaware wouldn't do it unless there was an amendment to the Constitution. Next, the 14th Amendment. The most important part of this amendment is the Equal Protection Clause, and it said that laws cannot discriminate against people on the basis of race. And it also made it clear that Black people who had been slaves were American citizens, because before this, a lot of former slaves weren't given citizenship, so they couldn't vote, and they didn't have any rights, things like that. It was also really important for allowing schools to become desegregated. So before this amendment, a lot of schools, you had a school for white children and a school for Black children. And if a Black kid went to a white school, then everyone would get mad. Sometimes they would shoot the kid, and everyone was opposed to it. But after this amendment, they made it a law where you had to integrate the schools, so you couldn't separate them on the basis of race. Last is the 15th Amendment. This amendment gave all men the right to vote, regardless of their race or their ethnicity, or whether they had been slaves. So this passed in 1870. So this meant that all white men and all Black men could vote. Black women and white women still could not vote. But this made voting a little bit more equal.
Did it relate only to men?
Yes, only to men. Because women still weren't recognized by the Constitution.
No matter white or black.
Hmm?
No matter white or black women.
Yeah, no matter. All right, last, gender equality. So our Constitution does not guarantee equality between men and women. There is nothing about equality at all for men and women in the Constitution, and it does not prevent discrimination. So it is legal to discriminate against women in America, according to the Constitution. It also doesn't protect equality in education or guarantee the right to education for women, and it doesn't guarantee equality in medicine. So I have some maps. This first one says, does the Constitution protect girls' right to equality in education? So the dark blue countries guarantee equality for girls in education. As you can see, Kyrgyzstan is dark blue, so congratulations. The red ones do not guarantee equality for girls. Where's the US? What color is it? Red, yeah. So it doesn't protect girls' right to equality in education. This means that if a teacher decides to discriminate, if they decide to say only boys should learn math and girls shouldn't, then it's legal. I think that doesn't happen a lot, but technically it's legal. They can do it if they wanted to. Yep.
Because I thought that the United States was like, they created human rights and they created rights to protect women and girls.
They created rights for men, but not for women.
No, but all the issues about women protection comes from the United States and
It's
spread
because-
over the world.
It's because they don't have protection, so more people have to talk about it there, I think. Because they want to make laws that guarantee protection. Yeah. Good. All right, next. Medical care. So, does the Constitution guarantee medical care and treatment to women and girls? So, again, dark blue means it's guaranteed. So for Kyrgyzstan, it is guaranteed, as you can see up there. But red means that they do not guarantee medical care to girls and women. So this is a problem with access to care a lot, especially in rural areas, and also with health insurance. In America, the medical system is really different than a lot of countries. It's really expensive. You have to have insurance. You only have insurance if you have a job. So if you don't have a job and you don't have medical insurance, you can't go to the doctor. And even if you do have medical insurance, if you're a woman, you can still go to the doctor and be denied care because you're a woman. All right, and last, does the Constitution take any approach to gender equality? So most countries it does. Most countries are dark blue. Gender equality is guaranteed. But here the US is orange, so a little bit better now, it's not red. This means that there's a little bit of gender inequality, or gender equality in the Constitution. And that is in the 19th Amendment. So, the 19th Amendment is about women's suffrage. Who knows, what is suffrage? No. It sounds like it.
Teachers don't count, right?
Suffrage is the right to vote. It's not suffering. It sounds like it though. To vote. What is voting? So, women gained the right to vote in 1920 with the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. So finally, about 50 years after all the men could vote, women could vote too. So that is the only amendment to the Constitution that talks about gender equality. But there was an amendment called the Equal Rights Amendment that was proposed in 1923, but it was never passed. So this is not a law. It was proposed, and it would guarantee equal rights for all American citizens, regardless of sex or gender. But unfortunately, it's still not a law. But people still discuss this amendment, even though it hasn't been passed. It was first proposed about 100 years ago. It hasn't been passed yet, but it's still up for debate. There's a chance that states will ratify it and pass it. So it hasn't been passed for several reasons. The main reason is this lovely woman. Her name is Phyllis Schlafly. She was an activist for conservatives in the 1970s, and she opposed equality for women. She thought that women didn't deserve to get an education or to work. She thought that they needed to stay home and work in the kitchen and raise children, and they shouldn't read and things like that. She led the movement to oppose the Equal Rights Amendment. Also, the Equal Rights Amendment has not passed because you need 38 states to ratify it, but 37 states agreed to it, and they needed one more, so they couldn't pass it. But in 2020, Virginia became the 38th state to approve the ERA, to approve the Equal Rights Amendment. This happened in 2020, but it's still not a law. That was 2 years ago. So why? First, because some people think that it's too late. The amendment was proposed 100 years ago, so they think that everyone should forget about it because it's too old. Second, even though there are now 38 states that approve of it, some of those original states want to take back their support. They decide that they originally thought that women were equal to men, but now they don't think that they're equal, so they don't want this law to be passed in 2022. All right, and last, to conclude, why should the Constitution address and talk about gender issues? I think the first reason is that when the Constitution and the national government don't have laws protecting equal rights, that means that women have to rely on laws by individual states. But the problem is a lot of states have different values, different laws. For example, in the South, they are more conservative. They don't think that women should be equal. So if you live in the South and you want your woman, you have to rely on your national government to create laws for equality. Second, technically the US is violating an international treaty. So they agreed to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights with a lot of other countries and the UN. And this treaty says that sexes and genders should be equal. But since the US Constitution does not guarantee this, they are violating a law, an international law. And last, this law would be important for private companies. So there are a lot of private companies that don't face any consequences if they have discrimination. But a lot of people argue that if our Constitution guaranteed equality for men and women, that these companies would not be allowed to discriminate anymore. And then it would be more equal for men and women at work. Sources if you want to read more about the US Constitution. All right, so that's all that I have. Do you have any questions?
Can I ask something about, you said that employers, they don't guarantee the right for women employees, but if you apply for a job in the United States from, for example, from our country, they say that women applications are of higher priority. Why is that? Yeah.
Some companies create their own laws, their own rules, because they want to make it equal. But the problem with this is that's what an individual company decides, and not every company does that. So some companies, they agree, they think that men and women are equal, and they want more women to have an opportunity. So they create rules that help female applicants. But the problem is that this just depends on the company, and a lot of companies don't decide to do that.
Any questions to the lecturer?
Yes. Which ones?
We are going to make an activity with you. So, we are going to divide you into several groups in order to find out which rights do you have in our university. So you are the community of our university, and we would like you to draw a picture of the rights that you have in our university. You may choose your rights in your groups, in your department, I mean in Faculty of International Relations and Oriental Studies, or as a group of girls or as a group of boys. So please choose any groups, okay, you like. So, and you will be given, I think, 5 minutes, and then you have to present it, okay, like you did last lesson. So please.
About myself, my hobby is sport. I am the boxing fighter, and even if I don't look like that, but shortly before the competition, we should keep your weight. It's very important because if it will be the smaller, it will be easier, right? And that's why we decided to draw a little bit two different things. What I can eat and what I cannot eat, right? For example, I can't eat the unhealthy foods, fried foods and something like that. And I can eat the carbohydrates, like for example fruits, something like that. And thanks this thing, we decided to do what can we do in our university, right? What can we do? First, we can get education. First of all, even if we have disabilities, if people have disabilities, disorders, we mustn't smoke in a territory of the university. Doesn't matter is it a toilet or yeah, right? Yeah. We can go out if we will have a problem with the health, if we will have a family problems and something like that. Sure we can't fight, we can't argue with the teachers, and no, not fight, but argue, right? And so, what else? Yeah. So, not enough. We have a lot of things, but I just a little bit embarrassed, maybe that's why I forgot about that. That's all. Thank you for your attention, guys.
Yeah.
making this stand about the rights, we realized that we don't know much about that. So and we wrote down everything that we every right that we know for sure that what kind of right we have. So we have, as students, we have right to vote, which means that we have right to choose like the language you want to learn and everything. And also right to express our thoughts, which means that we can oppose the teachers' opinions or something like that. And also we have right to participate in university life, which means that we can we do have right to demand a better education. Sometimes like there might be a peace organization or something like that, so we have right to like demand better education. And we also have, as students, we also have right to choose the language to learn. Yeah, and also right to choose a place of practice. I believe that's what it is. Yeah, and lots of other things, but we don't. As I told you before, we don't know much about that. So yeah, that's it.
You said you have the right to choose a teacher. Does it mean that
No, not
that
teacher.
Language.
a language teacher, a lecture? So I thought it means that you attend the lecture you like and you don't attend the lecture. So like, right?
Okay.
Okay.
Today I want to presentate student rights in our university, and I want to thanks to my team. Without them we don't have this presentation. And in our university, in charge regardless of race, age, and orientation, and our university have a freedom of speech, and if you don't like something in our university, you can go to the student council and write or say something what you want to change or you don't like. And of course, our university supports and protect women and gender rights, and in our university allowed to have a relationship between students. For example, we don't have a bullying and between students, and students can allow to do that. And in our university have a friendship atmosphere, and we have some, in our education is one of the best in the country.
Зонок для преподавателей для своих лекций. Зонок для преподавателей для своих лекций.
Okay, guys, please take a seat and listen carefully. I'm Barstan, and I made a little presentation about the just ordinary student rights. And we just drew the picture like each student have a list of different paper where you can use the ball and go to restroom, drink water, take a dance, steal the people, and take money for this. I'm just kidding you. We just thought we knew about the right for education, right for functional freedoms of the speech and your opinion, but this is all usual. Do you agree with me? And we just choose the unordinary rights. For example, the first is the right to choose your topic, the time of the topic. We have this right. We could change it if we don't like it. The next one is the exception of the lesson if you are the student who participate in the some kind of sport competition. The next one about the restroom. No one could stop you from your nature topic. Okay.
Did anyone try to stop you?
Not in for me, just in general. But in school, yeah.
Cruel teachers.
Yeah. The next one about the water. why we drew the dance.
Teachers do not give students.
If they do not take the good point. It's about the army. A male student refused for the time, for the short period from the calling to the army, Turkish army. It was 4 years. Or if you just declare that, or get expelled from the studying, you have to go to the army. The next one about the naked person. Yeah, but sometimes the character, each person have a right to choose your wear, put what you want, put on what you want. And the last one about the refusing of this some kind of money collection, illegal money collection. For example, if you someone tell you give me the money we just collect for example for the lights, for the floor, or for the desk, the repair, you can refuse it. Yeah, that's all.
We are short of time, so please.
We wrote what we want to be that women in Turkish will be more protected, so that there is no violence, and women's place is where she wants to be, and women are strong. Women can do everything. Women's rights are humanitarian.
Okay, thank you.
There are two women who were by
Okay, thank you. And now, final poster, so please attention and be ready to smile. So, this is the rights from our teachers.
Like our students, so we can please see also our rights, yes, teachers' rights. And so the first here, we can dominate. The first, so the second, we can be late, because sometimes we also feel ourselves so tired. And sometimes late. So the third, make studies, or I mean, we can make you study. Yes, we can call your sometimes maybe we can yes, we can maybe mention yes about your homeworks and so on. Yes. So therefore we can sometimes shout. We don't use it. We don't shout, but we would like sometimes yes to shout and we punish. So and this here skip yes. So sometimes skip our lessons because depending on our mood. Sometimes we are in a low mood, sometimes we are in a high mood, and that's why we like to skip also, yes?
Why not?
Why not? Like the students. So, and here, not to conduct the lesson if there are
Less than 5 students.
yes, we can write, yes?
So we can call students early to wake them up. Yes.
Yes.
and late at the night.
Yes. To ask if you need your
Yes. Check. Yes. And students have rights, and teachers do it, but we don't abuse them our rights because we love you.
And I would like to inform you that next meeting will be on Friday at the same time here at 11